to the channel, guys, and we're going to be doing another walkthrough and setup guide. And this time I'm very early on. I thought, you know what, it's a perfect lap, to be honest. I think 114 is definitely as far as you're going to get. I don't think there's a 113 on the cards. I certainly think the lap time is beatable, but I thought I'll probably not put more into this one because of how sort of painful it is on my wrist, because there's a lot going on in the wheel. I had a little bash at this and probably spent 2 hours the first night on it, and then I've done probably another 2 hour session today on it, and I think that's probably all I'm going to do. I have got a few other things that I could try, but I think I'm happy with 114.8. I think it wasn't my best sector time in sector 1, but the other two sectors were good. My potential is probably a 114.7, looking at all my fastest sector times. But for now, let's just have a look at the setup and we'll take it from there. So I loaded up my Ghost from my previous fastest lap, and I haven't made any adjustments to it at all. Obviously the tyres are set to automatic by weather, but it's going to be the track tyre that's going to be used. There's no soft or hard compounds. And again, this whole setup, obviously I've run numerous laps to try and get the tyre pressures to where I want them, but this car is all about traction. It's all about getting out of the corner with as much traction as possible. So when you hear the car revving up, that's no good. You just want to be feeling for the traction all the time out of the corners. Brake pressure, again, we're just trying to get as much braking done as possible without locking out. And because you're using the brakes so much to turn the car, the brake balance here is very important. We don't want too much turn from the car, but you want to be able to stop the car. And obviously there's a lot of weight transfer that goes to the front end of the car, and the car really does dip hugely under braking. But the engine's a huge thing at the back of the car. So just trying to get that brake balance perfect really, and the 57.43 was spot on. And again, the downforce situation, obviously we're sliding through these corners, so using the rear downforce is sort of detrimental really. You might as well get rid of that downforce and use the power you've got down the straights. I think initially I started around 8 on the downforce. I think that got me to about 115.6. And then as soon as you started getting rid of the rear wing and getting the car to, really accelerate down those straights a lot better, number 2 on the rear was perfect. As you can see, the longitudinal weight bias, you've got that massive engine sat at the back of the car, so it's all the way towards the front on this one. Moving to suspension, I've got caster all the way up because there's so little camber that's maxed out on the front. The ride height is as low as it's going to go, as much as the car dips so much. But I've tried to offset this with having such a high bump stop. The front springs, I think these are softened quite a lot. Obviously we don't want to suffer too much from turning understeer, as much as there's so much oversteer on this car. The rear cambers, because we're running so little rear wing, I decided to introduce a lot more camber. I think when I was running at around 8 on the rear for downforce, I had about 0.5 on the cambers. But because I've reduced the rear downforce, the car was sliding a little bit too much in the corners, so just increased the rear cambers. Increased the rear ride height just to get a bit of rake on the car and get some of that aero working a bit more efficiently, seeing as we've got rid of so much of the rear aero. And the rear springs are as tough as they're going to get. Moving to the steer ratio again, I'm using the McLaren reel. I don't want to be fighting with this wheel using loads of lock. We're going from lock to lock lots of times through this circuit. and really fighting that wheel's just crazy idea. Get on the GT3 wheels, they're perfect. So the turning, obviously we're trying to get some turning response, so just 2 clicks on the front. And the anti-roll bars, not maxed out, but it's quite stiff on the front. That rear toe angle's just to help to keep the car a little bit straighter on the acceleration, especially out of the last turn when we're down in first gear. We really want to try and keep the car as straight as possible exiting that corner. And 85 on the rear, it's maxed out, so as stiff as we can through the rear. Moving to dampers, like I mentioned before, the bump stop's pretty high. Put it this way because as you see the car lurching through the braking phases and that front end almost scraping along the floor. So just trying to keep those bump stops quite high, stiffen that suspension a little bit more. And again, I think I've just stiffened out or softened out through the rear. I can't exactly remember what these were on the defaults, but I've probably made a few adjustments to these and running the lowest transition, so I want a really fast transition on the bump stops, on the bump transition. Obviously we don't touch any of these, the radiator's all the way down, and again engine braking, I think this goes all the way up to 10. Yeah, all the way up to 10, so there's quite a bit of engine braking going on just to help the car rotate. And I might have touched some of these gear ratios, I'm not quite sure. Definitely touched the 5th gear because we just don't get up to the high end of 5th. So as we continue down to the traction control, I don't particularly think there is any traction control going on here, so setting this is sort of obsolete really, but that's what it was on, so I've just left it. I don't think I'm using traction control at all. Certainly can't hear it kicking in. For the differential, I did have a little look at the spool, to be honest, because we're trying to get so much acceleration and the car's just, it's just all about traction. So I did try the spool, but I think the limited slip diff is certainly helping somewhere on the circuit as much as the car's sliding so much. So moving down to the clutch LSD, yeah, just setting these accordingly really, trying not to let the car spin too much. And like I say, it's just a balancing act, the clutch LSD, just trying to get the car to turn, not to be too laggy on the acceleration, moving from braking to accelerating. So 80 on the preload and went for 50-50 on the coast and ramp angles. Obviously we're trying to get that car to rotate under braking, so quite high on the coast ramp. Generally I don't really like the car to rotate too much, and I'd probably have this all the way down at 20 a lot of the time, 25 maybe. So 50 is quite a strange one for me. And the ramp angle, I usually have this quite a way up as well, but because the car is sliding so much and you're really having to do everything on the pedals really, just to get the car to balance nicely. So yeah, 50-50 on the clutch LSD. I don't think the viscous lock is doing anything, you can't select it or deselect it. So I assume the viscous lock isn't doing anything, although I put it up to 500. So that's the tune, guys. Let's have a look at the lap. Yeah, so when we're coming into these corners here, really spend some time practicing this section of the circuit, because when it matters during your lap, this is going to be one of the hardest sections to get right. You're going to be coming around here in first gear, and you really want to be whipping the car, you know what I mean? You're sort of going to be on the accelerator to about here, and the car's going to be sort of unbalanced, leaning over onto the right hand side of the car. And then as we're sort of still turning this way, we're trying to induce like the, I forget, the Scandinavian flick as it's called, so that all the weight's on the right hand side of the car. And just as we dab on the brake pedal, we're going to flick it round to the right to get the car to really slide round this corner. And then as soon as we're round, you're sort of on the pedal already to accelerate. Really twitchy car. So up to second, up to third, up to fourth gear. Don't go too close to this wall on the right hand side, or else it just drags you in. Up to fifth gear. I'll just slow the car down a little bit here, because we're going to be in fifth gear, and your braking area is around here somewhere. It's just before the 400 metre board, or the 400 yard board. So we're going to have 2 clicks down, or a click down to fourth, and then a click down to third, not too quickly or it just unsettles the car too much, and then a click down to second gear. And again, we're going to be sort of whipping the wheel to get it to start turning. I mean, you can take quite a bit of this curb if you can manage to get it nailed perfectly, and then we're back on the power again. And then just this GEHL board on the left hand side there, you want to be braking as much as you can in a straight line in second gear before that board, just before it. So we're braking hard, and then we're sort of going to turn into this corner and then drop down to first gear, and then again whip it round. So the car's going to be sliding, and then we're back on the accelerator trying to keep nice and straight. Up to second gear, and just a little dab of the brake pedal and it forces the car to start sliding. And this is where you need to be really tentative on the accelerator. Don't go full throttle. Just nice and gentle through here on the accelerator, and then up to flat out. Again, just a little dab of the brake pedal, a little bit further back where the tarmac changes colour, still keeping in second gear. And you can take quite a bit of these curves, but again, just trying to keep the car straight, and then gentle on the power, and then up to full speed. Up into third gear, and then dropping down to second gear at the 300 yard board, and just waiting a little bit, brake and then turn in. So you're sort of turning in to hit this wall like this, more or less. But because of the slide of the car, it's just going to carry you past it. And then we're going to be sliding, gentle on the accelerator. And then eventually we'll get grip, and then up to third gear. So down into second gear just before the 200 yard board. Heavy on the brake pedal, get the car to twist. And again, you're aiming for the wall sort of like this, but because the slide of the car, you're going to be aiming to just miss the right hand side here. And then it'll still carry wide, out to keep the car straight, up into second, or up into third gear, all the way down here. And then just before we get to the 300 yard board, about now, change to third gear, heavy on the brake pedal, down to second, get the car to slide, and then again taking as much of this curve as you dare, and then keeping straight, heavy on the brake pedal, down to first gear. The car's sliding all over the place at this point. We're all the way on the right hand side, and then we're going to flick the car in, get it to spin through this corner, and then back on the power as soon as we can. Twitching everywhere, up to third gear, and then across the line. And if you've managed to do all that without touching the wall, you should get a nice 115. And if you're lucky enough to do it perfect, you'll be in the 114s. And that's it, guys. That's the lap. Thanks for watching once again. remember, please hit that subscribe button. It really does help build the channel, and it really does gives me some inspiration that there's people interested in what I'm putting out there. So thanks again for watching, guys, and have a very Merry Christmas. I don't think I'll be producing another video before Christmas, and I think I've got a 3-week trip out on the oil rigs after Christmas, so I'm going to be very much absent from the YouTube channel for a couple of weeks, and then hopefully I'll probably be back doing some more videos later in near towards the end of January. So for some of us, this isn't our day job, and we still have to turn out and do a day job from time to time, which takes me away for quite a while. But hopefully I'll be back putting some more videos together in the future. And until then, have a happy Christmas and a very happy New Year, and ciao for now.